Hi, everybody. As time is tight, I am hoping that we will start quite quickly. I do hope everybody has had a chance to grab a coffee, or if you're starting to think about the evening, as our colleagues are in Japan, maybe some herbal tea, but some refreshments none the least. So the next session in our really exciting program is entitled MSP and the Blue Economy, with the focus around European initiatives. And one of the things I want to remind everybody, and we've already spoken about this a little bit already today, that the seas know no boundaries. So whilst our previous emphasis was on maybe South Asia, European, and this emphasis is on Europe. Really, we are speaking about something that is truly global. So we are going to have some really great presentations by Juan Ronco from the European Commission in Belgium, from Riku, who is from Sky Plan for Blue in Finland, and Ivana, who is with the Submariner Network for Blue Growth. So Juan, I'm going to hand over to you. I'm hoping you're there. You are. Great. Excellent. And let's get this session underway.
Okay, thank you, Karin. I will share my screen.
Yes.
Yep. Okay. Can you see my screen now?
Yes, it's not in full. If you can put it.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Let me. Oh, I landed in a slide. Okay, now you got the
now
first
it's perfect
slide. Okay, thank you. So, okay, thank you very much for inviting me for this webinar. And I am talk you through the initiatives in the European Union to bring the blue economy about in the EU context. MSP being or playing a critical role in this regard. So what is the blue economy? Well, the blue economy is made up of different sectors, but it's also made up of the marine environment, which is key for the development of the blue economy. There will be no blue economy without a healthy and productive marine environment. To give you a quick overview of the blue economy in the EU, so as I mentioned, all activities related to ocean, seas, and coast. The blue economy covers a wide range of interlinked sectors. You see some of them in this drop, I would say. And it was estimated that 4.5 million people or jobs are directly involved in the blue economy. You see there a blue economy report that was issued this year by the European Commission. We are issuing one report every year, and you got there the link where you can find information on these blue economy sectors. But why do we need a new approach for a sustainable blue economy in the EU? Before in the EU, there was this, I would say, strategy for blue growth. But we moved from blue growth now to sustainable blue economy. As mentioned by previous speakers about the Sustainable Development Goals, we are facing on Earth various and important challenges. Here you got some of them. For instance, affecting the ocean, you got acidification, reduced biodiversity, global warming. And there are imperatives so to face and to tackle these challenges, reduce emissions, apply the circular economy. There is also this shift from land to sea. The potential of the sea, of the marine environment is huge. So for instance, with 1% of Europe waters, we could provide 3 times more seafood that we consume today. This is an example. Or energy. There is quite a lot of potential for energy production. So this is a new context. So we have the global context, I would say, the 2030 agenda, the European Green Deal. There will be no green without blue. And we have to transition to the sustainable blue economy, also to contribute to the recovery of sectors affected by COVID. And this will be achieved in the European Union across all the sectors and across all the EU member states. This is the European Green Deal, which is the EU's, I would say, strategy to achieve these ambitious targets and to meet these challenges. So for the marine environment, some of these initiatives that you see there will apply. So I will discuss them now. And then for the blue economy, as mentioned before, the shift has changed from blue growth to sustainable blue economy. What does this mean? This means that to promote this blue economy, we will need to take action in different areas. You see there in these blue figures, for instance, observation and data about the marine environment, knowledge, cooperation, investment, management of the space. And then you see there are these, I would call them sub-initiatives to bring about this new sustainable blue economy. The EU Commission issued a communication. This is a kind of blueprint or a strategy paper or document in May this year to outline what the path could be to the delivery of the sustainable blue economy. And the main thrust is about making the value chains in the blue economy, transforming them to make them more sustainable, resilient. You see there, for instance, one very specific area is decarbonization of the blue economy. Biodiversity and coastal resilience. This is also something that will affect value chains and hopefully to make them greener and more resilient. Responsible food systems. There is now quite a lot of about food systems, sustainable food systems. So the blue economy needs to be sustainable also in these sectors. Fisheries is one of them, aquaculture, of course. And then circularity. So this circularity goes even beyond, I would say, what concerns the marine environment. For instance, plastics. That's the EU has a plastic strategy to reduce plastics because most of them end up in the sea. So to have this blue economy, we have to set the right conditions. So in terms of, for instance, knowledge, research and innovation, investment, blue skills. So a number of actions are being deployed to set the right conditions for the development of the blue economy. And then there are 3 horizontal or actions, cross-cutting actions. Marine spatial planning or maritime spatial planning is one of them, but we have also sea basing strategies and very important ocean literacy. We will launch a blue forum very soon. So maritime spatial planning in the EU. So you see there why. And I think most people will be familiar with these reasons. The framework that the EU adopted in 2014 to implement MSP in the EU, across the EU, as an EU directive, so a framework law. And these are the main characteristics. It's basically about process and about some outcomes. There was talk about data. So the directive asks member states, EU countries, to use best available data. take into account land-sea interaction. So in terms of integrating with the coastal management. So this is the main tenets of the directive is that member states themselves, not the EU, are responsible for their planning, and that the Commission sets a broader framework. Here you see the schedule in terms of timeline, so entry into force in 2014, and by March of this year, member states, EU countries had to be ready with the maritime special plan. Not all of them are ready, but most of them will be ready soon. So there is work being done. And there you see the scope. So it goes up to the 2,000 nautical miles, but in some cases it could even go to the continental shelf. So then, sorry, an example of blue economy, offshore wind energy, so green energy generation. You see there the ambitions of the EU are considerable to increase the production of offshore wind energy in the coming years to meet the targets for decarbonization. You need space to do that, and not all space is really suitable. You see here is the maritime special plan of Belgium, where you see some of areas that are being reserved for offshore wind parks, and where offshore wind parks have been set up. And I think some of the Japanese speakers were discussing this issue about fisheries. So I take this as an example. Offshore wind and fisheries may be some sectors, or maybe sectors that are in conflict, but there are also possibilities for synergies. So depending of the member state, I would say the location of this fishing of the offshore wind parks and the fishing areas are being discussed, and there are ways to ensure that, for instance, fishermen continue to benefit from fisheries. For instance, artificial reefs are constructed, but there are also ways to tackle these conflicts by creating synergies. For instance, having aquaculture being done in the wind parks, as you see in this slide. Sorry. So successful collocation, which is in fact what we should be aiming at, is supported by a number of actions. So engagement, they have to talk to each other, these sectors. But then there are also ways to ensure that fishermen continue having a living in this, having compensation packages. This is something that is being done in some member states, like the Netherlands. So for fishermen that have lost fishing opportunities, compensation is being granted. Okay, thank you very much.
That's wonderful, Juan. Thank you so much for that really positive overview. Great to see all the things that are coming through from Europe. I'm going to now hand over to Riku and to think about something that we've all touched upon, but it'll be nice to get an actual full 10 minutes of this. Sustainable blue economies, because as we've all mentioned in various ways, it's all very well thinking about the marine as a future frontier, but we have to do it. We have to learn the lessons from what we've done to our land resources. So Riku, over to you, please.
Yes, thank you, Karin. Yes, I was invited to present what we did in Plan for Blue project, and thank you for that. And so what I'm going to present you is, I hope you can see in the presentation mode.
Yes, go ahead.
Yes, and I'm presenting what we did in Plan for Blue project, and I'm presenting the examples of what sort of research can help in developing MSPs in ways to take into account sustainable blue economic developments. the project that we ran, it was a joint project with our Estonian neighbors. So it was a project that focused on southern Finland and northern Estonia and the sea area of Gulf of Finland and Archipelago Sea. And this area is in the northern Baltic Sea in northern Europe. And both Finland and Estonia are member states of the European Union. And during the project duration, both countries were implementing the EU directive on MSP that Mr. Rongo just presented. And what I'm presenting here now is 4 types of activities that we did to inform these processes. The first on economic analysis, and then a bit on the future scenario activity that we did. And then we did some environmental research on vulnerability of sea areas, and then we ran a couple of cross-border cases. First, about the economic analysis, and you can see on the map on the right that we focused the sectors were blue bioeconomy, energy, marine construction, tourism, and transport. And we did not, in this part of the project, we did not focus on mapping use of the sea areas by different sectors, but actually looking at where are the companies and where are the jobs and where the money is going from these sectors to kind of get an understanding of economic geography of blue economy in this region. And then our economists from University of Turku and University of Tartu, they studied, for instance, that what is the role of blue economy in economies of these regions and countries. And here are 2 general points that first of all these areas are the major drivers of economic growth for both countries. Mm-hmm. So they're very important economic areas, but they also found out, for instance, that productivity of blue sectors is on average higher comparing to non-blue sectors. Mm-hmm. And the analysis also looked in more details that what are the factors for productivity and so forth, and what could be learned from the neighboring country. And then we did quite extensive work on future scenarios. We ran surveys, conducted interviews, and organized workshops, and there was over 100 experts from sectors and administration and science from both countries that took part in this work. In this work we developed 4 alternative storylines for future developments, and then looked at how these different sectors, how the alternative futures might play out for these different sectors, and identified key drivers and factors for future development with these experts, and identified black swans and weak signals that should be taken into account in thinking of the blue economy futures. And we produced, there's a pretty extensive report and then infographics for each sectors. And we did also something fun. We made a video of these alternative storylines, and I will hopefully show it to you. I hope that this works fine. It's a brief video, and here we go.
We are now facing a situation in which we have to make choices, whether we like it or not. Our decision on which direction to choose from here should be based on the evidence that has been gathered. The Plan for Blue project looks at 4 alternative scenarios for how our choices will affect people and the marine nature, and change the ways the sea areas in the Gulf of Finland and the Archipelago Sea are used, now and in the future. The direction of unlimited growth means that there will be little regulation. Fossil energy will be used without much consideration and without investments in renewable energy. The sea areas will be congested with cargo vessels, fishing boats and tourists. The sea will become polluted, and polluting activities will threaten wild species. We can also head for a digitalized world, in which extensive digitalization reduces the need for transport, among other things. Vessels will sail without crews, and virtual travel will replace traditional tourism. More energy will be needed, and it will be produced from renewable sources. The circular economy and locally grown food, for example, the cultivation of algae, will be important. However, we can't be sure about all the advantages and disadvantages of a digitalized future yet. For example, will we be able to produce enough renewable energy? In the third scenario, people live sustainably. This means strict environmental regulation and zero-emission vessels. Responsible tourists go only to permitted areas and enjoy locally grown food in the spirit of the circular economy. In this future, energy is produced from renewable sources. If it feels difficult to make decisions, we will continue just like we have until now. We will keep on chopping and changing without a shared goal. We will use renewable and fossil energy side by side. We will consume and travel more and more, even though we worry about the state of the planet Earth. Which direction would you choose?
Yes, and well, of course, that final question is a simplification, and the more material, the infographics and the report will give some more concrete ideas for thinking of what would be the answer to that question. But then, in addition to this economic and future scenarios, we did environmental analysis. First was the on the maps on the upper map is about vulnerability profile. It shows the sensitivity of species and habitats and valuable nature areas, and the next analysis was about the cumulative risk profile, where we use the existing data on human activities at sea and human pressures and analyze them together with these data on sensitive species and areas. And you can see in the map, for instance, the region of Helsinki, where there's lots of human activities, clearly is visible as an area of cumulative risks. And we then produced also info cards on different sectors and the main pressures that they cause, and also info cards for some key species and habitats and what are the main risks, and this information was produced to inform MSP authorities in their work. And then finally, about the cross-border cases, and this was, we discussed with MSP authorities in Finland and Estonia that what kind of cross-border topics they would like to elaborate a bit further in this project, and these three topics were chosen. Maritime transport and pelagic fishery, they were sort of obvious choices because both of the activities are very much cross-border activities in themselves. But protected areas was also raised as interestingly was raised as an issue because in both countries the MPAs were already designated before the MSP's processes started. But here the MSP authorities, they wanted to work with their neighbors to come up with ideas that how could they take or include these already existing MPAs in the MSPs that they were doing. So it was about cross-border learning, and so the key messages from these cases to MSP processes were such that, for instance, in maritime transport, that kind of reminder that economic dependence on shipping in these areas is huge. And it was also the point that shipping is actually the cleanest mode of transport per unit per mile. And then in terms of future thinking, one must be aware that the changes in trade routes on sea, air and land may shift the balance between ports and shipping lanes and the importance of ports and shipping lanes. And for MSP, this would mean that you should be able to be a bit flexible also in cross-border perspective, so that you can incorporate these possibly even rapid changes. And then regarding protected areas, well, one thing is that of course they already give you a signal of high nature values where they are, that can be used in MSP. But for MSP, it was underlined that one should not look at MPAs individually, but actually consider it as a network. And then regarding MSP's role in this case, where MPAs were already designated, is the kind of the minimum for MSP is to reduce human pressures to MPAs from the outside of MPAs, and also to support connectivity between MPAs. And then regarding fisheries, which is governed by fisheries policy, not by MSP, there the message regards especially the planning evidence that fishing grounds should be planning evidence, but also routes to shipping grounds from the shipping harbors, and that the MSP could play a role in protecting areas for spawning and different life stages, for instance, the essential fish habitats. So thank you. Here were some examples of what we did and what research could do to help MSP processes in dealing with sustainable blue economy, and more you can find from our website. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that presentation. It's always great to have something different in the middle, and I'm a big fan of actually using videos for my research and infographics, so really great to see this. In the interest of time, we're going to move along and come back to questions. A number of questions are coming in, and we're going to go to Ivana, who's going to speak about MSP for blue growth in the EU. So bringing together very much what Juan and Riku were speaking about previously. And over to you, Ivana.
Karen, I'm sorry to interrupt just a second.
Yeah.
Hi there. Sorry, Karen. Sorry, Ivana, just to interrupt. We were having a bit of a problem on the two previous presentations with some blocks appearing on the slides.
Oh, really?
We're not sure whose end it's at. But Ivana, if you'd like to start sharing your presentation, if there's a problem with yours too, then we can share, Oscar can share the presentation and see if that's any better. But let's see how it goes first of all.
Okay, thanks very much. First of all, it's a great pleasure to be here today with you. I will try to share it. I see only an option to share my whole screen, so you might see yourself for a second and then my presentation. Apologies for that. How does it look now?
It looks good. I think we're okay.
Yeah. I didn't have any problems, Stephen. I'm not sure about the other participants, but Ivana, over to you. Okay, excellent. So again, thanks very much. It is a great pleasure to be here today with everyone. So my name is Ivana and I work for Asper Sustainable Projects in Berlin, Germany. We're a consultancy dealing with topics of maritime or marine spatial planning, integrated maritime policy, and sustainable blue economy or sustainable blue growth. Today I have been invited to tell you about MSP for Blue Growth. So a bit about the study that we have actually conducted in 2018, which was actually titled MSP for Blue Growth, and a bit about the work that we're currently doing on MSP connected to blue economies, sustainable blue economies, and how this can be facilitated. It is also relevant to say that Asper is also Secretariat of the Submariner Network for Blue Growth, which is based also in Berlin, but it is a network for the Baltic Sea and beyond, gathering together regional authorities, but also SMEs, technology parks, universities, businesses, and so on to work jointly on the more innovative and sustainable use of marine resources and maritime resources. Okay, so first, what is really a role of MSP in driving sustainable blue growth? I think it's important to say that MSP comes as a plan, as a final product. It is really a plan, integrated map of current uses, future demands, areas are reserved for nature and for future generations. However, MSP is also a process, ideally a continuous process which brings people around the same table to discuss conflicts, ideally solve conflicts, minimize them, and also discuss synergies. And we have heard about some of the synergies that could be facilitated, such as the one between certain types of fisheries, passive fisheries, and offshore wind farms, for example. So really, MSP has a double-fold role
to avoid conflicts in already busy places and set the scene for the sea as a development area and source of national and regional competitiveness. I will briefly touch upon the technical study, which we have developed, as I said, in 2018 in the framework of the EU MSP platform. The study was titled MSP for Blue Growth. MSP is a tool to support sustainable blue economy. And the study had three elements, also important elements of MSP in the context of supporting the blue economy. So the first one, which is visions for maritime space. The second one, which is really future spatial demands of maritime trends. And finally, indicators. How do we track progress towards a blue growth? How do we know if MSP processes and plans can cater for a blue growth? The first part of it resulted with a handbook on developing blue growth visions in MSP. Oops, I think I have a timer here on. I'm sorry, I just have to turn it off. Big apologies for that.
No problem. You still have time on our talk, so please go ahead.
Okay, excellent. It should be off now. Good. So first part is really a handbook. So it resulted with a handbook on developing blue growth visions in MSP. So what is really a joint future that we're working towards? So what are we actually planning for? It is important first to agree on that, ideally in an inclusive process together with the stakeholders. So the handbook really tried to answer some of the key questions. So how different visions, scenarios, strategies have already been developed around the EU, and what are some of the key steps that could be used and key elements that could be used for the development of kind of an ideal process, a vision process for the local area. And since 2018 until now, the vision handbook has really been used and have really been referenced all around the EU in ongoing MSP processes and further. Now, the other thing was that resulted from the study was the handbook for developing indicators for tracking the blue growth performance of MSP. So starting off from a vision, really developing a more concrete objectives, smart objectives and targets. What are then really indicators, and what is the system of measurements that can be used in order to track progress and see if MSP is really delivering blue growth, is it delivering sustainable blue growth, and how that can be measured. So the handbook provides examples of those countries that have went through that process already, and it provides really kind of a system of indicators on how this could be tracked for the future. The third part really dealt with blue growth trends in different maritime sectors, and looked at, okay, what are the future trends and what are the spatial implications of these trends? So an example of offshore wind we have here, and we know that future offshore wind farms are to be really further offshore. They're already planned to be further offshore. They're going deeper. Therefore, we also see larger turbines with larger capacities. We're already dealing with a floating technology. And we also hear about lots of innovative technologies, including the nature inclusive design, such as, for example, artificial reefs being developed either side by side with a offshore wind farm, or integrated into the design of a pile. Then there are other innovations, including the hybrid grid solutions, energy islands, and multi-use with other ocean users, be it aquaculture, tourism, or fisheries. Now, all these trends also have spatial implications. So what do these trends mean in terms of space that might be needed for the future? And also, we also see some trends in terms of really offshore wind expanding. So we do have all these targets that needs to be reached in order really to be in line with the Paris Agreement. So therefore, MSP really needs to be forward-looking, considering future trends and their possible spatial implications. Maritime spatial planning is really a lever for sustainable blue growth, and it has been recognized by both industry and governments as a tool that can improve the level of certainty, transparency, and predictability of private investments. And MSP does so by guiding site selection, streamlining development through mitigating litigation risks, speeding up delivery and investment, and easing the permitting process. An interesting fact is that Netherlands' North Sea plan actually cut the cost of offshore wind permits by 2/3. MSP can ensure conflict reduction and foster synergies with other ocean users, establishing a base for the application of the multi-use approach. So we have heard today already a couple of times, also from Mr. Ronco from the Commission, about the concept of co-location or multi-use. So let's see, what is that actually? Because it's really now almost becoming a trend, but what is it actually, and what is it bringing to us? So we're hearing about lots of opportunities. We're hearing about the sustainable blue economy, blue growth. There are lots of opportunities, but in order to really realize that and do it in a way that is more sustainable, more integrated, in order to integrate all these objectives, we have to talk about multi-use, co-location, really sharing of space and sharing of resources. So multi-use as such is an intentional, synergetic, joint use of resources, be it a physical space, joint offshore platform, for example, or joint logistics, shared by two or more ocean users. As such, it is a radical change from the traditional concept of exclusive resource rights to inclusive sharing of resources by multiple users. And MSP in several EU countries has already incorporated this concept, including, for example, Portugal, Belgium, Netherlands, and so on. And many of the other countries are currently in the review process to see how, for certain sectors, this can be taken on board. So some of the benefits, key benefits, are really reduced demand for ocean space and relevant socioeconomic as well as environmental synergies that could be derived. On an interesting picture here, we see a couple of different multi-use combinations, including fisheries and offshore wind, but also tourism and fisheries, so-called pesca tourism, offshore wind and tourism, and so on. I would like to refer briefly to the project United. It's called United, and it has 5 different pilots, which are really trying to increase the TRL, so technology readiness level of multi-use solutions in 5 European countries. So it is really developing things in the water, in the real environment. And some of the interesting ones are, for example, the one in Belgium, which was referred to earlier, which is really looking to restore the ancient oyster in the North Sea in form of a reef, but also grow the seaweed within the offshore wind farm. The Netherlands is looking at the combination between seaweed and the solar, so how these two can grow really side by side. And the Germany one is developing offshore wind together with mussels and seaweed, but very far offshore. So it is actually the first time that something is being developed that far offshore. Therefore, lots of operation, lots of logistic challenges to be overcome, as well as the licensing by the authority. So very interesting questions that are being answered now almost for the first time. And these pilots are actually very much needed in order to assess the impacts. And really then build confidence of planners, of regulators for regulating and making the procedures for such developments in the future, and probably integrating them in maritime spatial plans. This is an example of a Danish pilot, which is combining offshore wind and tourism. You can actually go to the wind farm, climb up to the top, open the nacelle and see the view. It is really an exceptional thing to actually do. However, what was crucial in this case was actually involvement of the local communities and the production of the layout together with the local communities, a layout, a spatial plan for that offshore wind farm over there, and close alignment with the local communities and their engagement also resulted with that farm being partially, so half of it is actually owned by the local cooperatives. So there is really a sharing of the benefits. This was done really a long time ago, even before the first Maritime Spatial Plan. But the question is now how MSP can take on board such processes and really support such processes in innovative
Ivana, thank you so much for all of the wonderful examples and presentations. But in the interest of allowing people to have some time to ask you questions and directly, I'm going.
This is my last slide.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. Great. If you could just finish up.
Yeah. So as a final thing, multi-use should be an integral part of MSP, and innovative multi-use concepts advocating for a more systemic approach in planning will have a key role in reconciling different priorities, so decarbonization, food security, and nature protection. Nature-based inclusive multi-use is becoming a norm in several countries. For example, nature-inclusive offshore wind development in the Netherlands. I have already mentioned a couple of these. So what is the key really is to have government is that the governments have a key role to drive these pragmatic solutions, because there are questions of fishing quota, insurance, safety zones, and all these really go even beyond MSP and cannot be solved by industry actors alone. So this is kind of really my sum up, and I would like to invite everyone to join the United Pilot if you would like to hear a bit more about that. So the concept of multi-use, what does it mean for MSP and how it's actually happening in the EU. Those are the dates. I will share the link. Thanks very much for your attention, and sorry for going over time. Thanks.
Great. Thank you. So I'm just looking at the questions here. As I noted, there's quite a few coming in. Riku, there's a number of people asking for you to give more details on the scenario and the scenario analysis that you put forth. But I'm going to actually ask you to maybe follow up with colleagues afterwards, because there's a number of more general purpose questions that I would like to offer to the wonderful panel. The first one, again, taking perhaps liberties as the chair, is from Ken, and he's saying that he's asking, talking from a global perspective, and because the sea knows no boundaries, what is the international collaborative effort to initiate or develop MSP in other continents, especially in Africa? So we're here today thinking about the rollout in South Asia, but let's think broader than that. We have a number of wonderful guests, and I open it up to Juan, Riku, and Ivana.
Okay.
Yes, please.
Come in, yes. Thank you for the question, because it provides me with an opportunity to talk about what we are doing here at the EU Commission at international level. So we are working with IOC UNESCO, with the Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission of UNESCO. So we have what we call we started in 2017 what we call a roadmap for the promotional development of MSP internationally, and the closing conference was I think last week. So we are providing funds to take a number of actions internationally to promote MSP. For instance, one very specific output was a set of guidelines for cross-border cooperation that was completed recently in the context of this initiative. But there have been also two projects, cross-border cooperation projects being funded, one in the Mediterranean and one in the Eastern Pacific. As for Africa, well, this is being done in the context of the MSP Global initiative. So if you Google MSP Global, you will find more information about this. For Africa, we have, as European Union, we have funded a number of projects, for instance, in research in the Atlantic. I think South Africa, or I don't remember exactly which country, or perhaps for sure, I think it was Cape Verde participated in one of these projects. But I recognize that perhaps we have to do more for Africa. I mean, Africa meaning in the Mediterranean, we have done, I think, something, but we should do more outside the Mediterranean. So that's we have done something, as I said, globally through the IOC UNESCO initiative in the Mediterranean, but we need perhaps to do more in Africa. Thank you.
Pardon me, Riku or Ivana?
Yes, if I may continue from what Mr. Ronco said. I mean, of course, I have to advertise this UNESCO MSP guide that I was one of the authors. Obviously, I mean, we collected their sort of the current multiple examples around the globe on MSP, on different stages of MSP. But then, in addition to that, that some of the UN regional sea conventions have been quite active also in promoting MSP collaboration in across borders. Also, that's both in West Africa and also East Africa. There are processes going on, and which are good to follow and maybe to contribute to if it's possible. But, yeah.
Great, wonderful. And there's a number of questions that have popped up that can be broadly brought under the idea of trade-offs and the difficulty between sectors within the marine, but also between sustainability and the economy and the marine sector versus others. So any thoughts on any follow-ups from this perspective? And Ivana, a number of them are very much towards you.
Also, in the international context, I would like to mention this project is called Multiframe, and it is very interesting from that perspective, because it is really looking at the sustainability of ocean multi-use and how ocean multi-use has been taken up in maritime plans all around the world. And the project involves countries, case studies in, for example, Brazil, United States, Mozambique. And what I see interesting, because this is really an international global collaboration, similar to something that has been happening in the context of MSP Global. But what is interesting is that MSP still almost means different things around the globe, and especially the concept of multi-use is understood differently. But when it comes to the trade-offs, what this project is trying to do is to actually produce an agreed assessment approach, an assessment framework on how to assess the sustainability of multi-use. So really considering both in combination effects of multi-use, so what sort of effects one use could have on the another one, in combination, what sort of effects they could have on the environment, on the local communities, and so on. So from all these three different perspectives of sustainability, economy, ecology, and social perspectives as well. And how countries deal with that and with trade-offs is interesting. But in some countries, you have government-led sectors really discuss themselves what are kind of the mitigation measures, how do they go about their trade-offs, how do they agree on the project level, I mean. While some of the countries really provide guidelines already on what could be actually the mitigation measures that could be taken on board. So now I think this project will come up with something very, very interesting, and it will provide kind of a review of how the countries go about it, what are the good practices, and so on. So yeah, that is kind of a hint from my side for now.
Great. We've one more minute in terms if Juan or Riku want to address anything in terms of trade-offs with regard to multi-use?
Well, but I mean, regarding the dealing with trade-offs, I think it comes to dialogue, obviously, and also a good assessment in the pre-planning phase that you actually know who are the actors and what are the sectors, and also think of the future trends of these different sectors, so that you don't only plan for the status quo, but also think that how are things evolving. But I think that the key is really to organize dialogue between different sectors as part of even the planning phase of MSP, and so that you can, that's a way to bring these different interests together and trying to find a balance between them, which is not always so easy, but I think it comes down to organizing dialogue and support that with good analysis.
I think it's really wonderful that you picked out to look towards future trends as well. Often we're thinking as a baseline, whilst you're completely right. It's we should be meeting future trends rather than thinking about where we are now. And Juan, I saw you put up your hand as well, so I am keen to give you the final word.
Yes, I mean, I answered the question in writing.
I saw that.
And I think, I mean, Riku mentioned most of the points I touched upon in my reply. So the key preparation is key. So these conflicts should be solved before they pop up. So to avoid these trade-offs of negative trade-offs. And then I also mentioned in my answer, monitoring of the implementation of the plan is key. So to see indeed, well, what are the issues, what are the trade-offs, what are the gains and the losses, what are the benefits and the drawbacks of the plan, who is the loser, who is the winner. If you can assess this, you should assess this with proper monitoring. And then adaptation, that's also a key feature of or should be a key feature of maritime special plans, that they are adaptive, so that they are not fixed or carved in stone for I don't know 20 years, so that you can quickly adapt if should trade-offs or negative or adverse effects appear for particular sectors or communities.
Yeah. Thank you so much for bringing up the monitoring as well. And I'd like to have a shout out to taking into consideration the real life problems that may come with monitoring. For example, I was doing some work in the Western Indian Ocean, and one of the main problems they had in the Comores is that everybody's related to everybody. So nobody was going to dob in their cousin if they were doing illegal fishing. So, and these are, you know, they're funny to us, but they are real issues. So with that in mind, I am going to hand over to the coffee machine, basically, and we will see you back for another 3 presentations at 5 past your hour. Thank you.